A woman came into my clinic in Ballinasloe recently. She'd been diagnosed with cancer. I sympathise with her, not because she's been diagnosed with cancer and that both herself and her family are going to have to go through that challenge over the next number of months, but because of the horrendous experience that she is going to have to go through in order to be granted a medical card. I welcome the report by the Cancer Society because it exposes two issues. First of all, the failure to properly recognise medical expenses in the assessment of the medical card in illnesses such as cancer. It's not a means assessment, it's a mean assessment. The average spend per month for a cancer patient is €862. The average income loss is €1,400. However, the allowances that are provided under the medical card system for health expenses, prescribed medicines and appliances, and for hospital charges comes to the princely sum of €62.65 a week. That means the figure of €459.49 a week in costs and income lost that has been identified by the Cancer Society is being ignored in the current medical card assessment. But even to get that recognition for that €62.65 a week, patients on chemotherapy will literally have to sweat blood and tears to get that out of the medical card section. The vast majority of these cases will, at the end of the process, be granted a medical card, but it's months down the road. And it seems to me that the main policy is to try and wear people down so that they just throw in the towel and don't pursue it to the bitter end. Secondly, I welcome this report, and I welcome that the Minister for Rural Affairs is here today, because it exposes the active discrimination within the medical card section of people who are sick and residing in rural areas. The report highlights that the average cost for travel expenses per month or per week is €66.23. And that's not just for cancer, that's for other medical conditions requiring frequent attendance at the regional centres. But the provision for transport under the medical card assessment comes under health expenses. And I have rarely seen a case where someone would get anything more than €15 a week, which is one quarter of the real costs identified by the Cancer Society. That's because we've developed these centres of excellence, particularly for cancer, and they're all very welcome. But for someone in my county that has to travel to Galway for a hospital appointment, that is €150 that they have to pay out for that. Because we don't have public transport so that they can get to the appointment and get back in a single day. Because of that, they have to pay for a taxi. The HSE won't assist in relation to that, social welfare won't assist in relation to that, and they have to fork that out of their own pocket. If you're unfortunate enough to come from somewhere like Arigna, that's €200 to get to the hospital appointment in the first place, and absolutely no recognition is being given of that fact by the medical card section.
Deputy.
Thank you, Ciancora. And I'd like to thank the deputies for raising these extremely important matters. At the outset, I think it's important to acknowledge the work and effort of health staff that have resulted in Ireland's cancer survival rate having improved consistently in recent decades. I have no doubt that the National Cancer Strategy Steering Group set up to advise on developing a new national cancer strategy for 2016 to 2025 will build on positive developments. We do not have a universal eligibility system for primary and community health services. I still take the view that until we have universal health care and everybody is entitled to health care, one will always have anomalies and injustices. There will always be somebody who is just above the means threshold, or who does not have the prescribed disease, or whose condition is not sufficiently severe, and as a result these individuals will not meet the assessment criteria. The deputies will be aware of the publication of the Kane report of the expert panel on medical need for medical card eligibility and the medical card process review. A key recommendation was that a person's means should remain the main qualifier for a medical card. The panel concluded that it would not be feasible, indeed or desirable, nor ethically justifiable to list medical conditions in priority order as a means of determining medical card eligibility. The findings of this expert panel raise questions for us as legislators about the approach of basing eligibility for health services on having a particular disease or special assessment arrangements for one disease or another disease. The HSE is ensuring a more integrated and sensitive processing of medical cards applications involving greater exchange of information between the Central Assessment Office and the local health offices in relation to people's medical circumstances and needs. We can see the results of these improvements. The number of discretionary medical cards in circulation has increased by about 76%, from about 52,000 in mid-2014 to nearly 93,000 at the beginning of September this year. Under the General Medical Services Scheme, eligibility is granted from the date that a complete application has been assessed and a decision made by the HSE in accordance with the legislation and national assessment guidelines. The HSE makes every effort to make timely decisions. The HSE has a target to have 90% of properly completed claims processed within the 15 days, as Deputy Conway referred to. The current turnaround is over 98%. This ensures that there is a short lead time between applications being submitted and a decision being made regarding the eligibility of the applicant. As you can appreciate, in light of the legislation, applications must be supported with a range of documentation as outlined on the application forms. It has to be acknowledged that the processing time for incomplete applications is dependent on the furnishing of the required supporting documentation. Discretion continues to be an integral part of the medical card assessment process. If an applicant's means are above the financial thresholds as set out in the national guidelines, the HSE routinely examines for indications of medical or social circumstance which might result in undue financial hardship in arranging medical card services. Exercising discretion may grant eligibility for a medical card on this basis. I am aware that the HSE routinely affords applicants the opportunity to furnish additional supporting information and documentation to fully take account of all relevant circumstances that may benefit them in the assessment, including medical evidence of cost and necessary expenses.
Thank you.
Minister, the problem with cancer patients and this 15-day loophole that the HSE uses, 15 days from when the documentation is provided, is that the medical card section in Finglas use what's called a three-card trick. Even though they have direct access to revenue, even though they have direct access to social welfare, they deliberately force sick patients to go into the local tax office to actually get a printout of their last tax liability. They force them to go into their social welfare office to get a printout of their last tax liability or payment from social welfare, even though they can get it at the press of a button in Finglas, but it delays processing that application and saves the medical card section money. Secondly, Minister, the report of the medical card eligibility group did make that recommendation that we shouldn't base medical cards on particular medical conditions. However, the Minister subsequent to that has announced that every child in this country diagnosed with cancer will get a medical card. I'm asking you now to lift that age barrier, that regardless of age, if someone is diagnosed with cancer, that they would get a medical card. And finally, Minister, in relation to this rural discrimination that's taken place across the board in relation to medical cards, not just in relation to cancer patients, not just in relation to people that are chronically ill, I want you as Minister to take this particular point up. And to give you just one example, a patient in Galway City is receiving treatment in Dublin and was given a medical expense which is €14.42 a week less than a patient living beside them in Galway City who is receiving their treatment in Galway University Hospital. The reality is that even though there's a lack of public transport in rural Ireland, the HSE is deliberately ignoring transport costs when they're making the medical assessment. And this is a practice that's going on right across this country at the moment. And the reality is that the HSE is actively discriminating against those who are sick and who are living in rural Ireland and cannot travel from provincial towns to the regional centres. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. And Talis Dodge.
And actually this allows me to assure the Deputy that we've already taken the initiative on the rural transport, and we were working with the HSE and we are working with the NTA, looking at parts of rural Ireland that people do experience a difficulty trying to get further hospital appointments, and looking at a way that we can, and we think we will be able to get cost savings, and looking at that initiative. So that initiative is well underway, I can assure the Deputy of that. But also on foot of the Kane report, the HSE established a clinical advisory group to develop clinical oversight and guidance for the operation of a more compassionate and trusted medical card system. The group includes patients' representatives, is continuing its work on the development of guidance on assessing medical card applications involving significant medical conditions. In the context of that work, the group made an interim recommendation to award, as you say yourself, Deputy, cards to all children under the age of 18 with a diagnosis of cancer for a period of 5 years. This decision was accepted by the HSE Director General. The existing assessment system is complex because it tries to ensure that a wide range of personal circumstances can be taken into account. We are still committed to further improving the existing system, and the work of the CAG will be central to this in the immediate future. In the medium term, I believe that we should focus on the strategic goal of universal healthcare, which will benefit everybody. Thank you. I'm already working on an initiative with the NTA and the HSE.
No, the rural discrimination in relation to medical cards, the issuing of those. Will you look into that specific issue?
You might just send me an email specifically on that.